Shevuot Daf Yomi Matmonim. We start a new perek. Be judgmental. Have you done it? Xavirych zchut. The perek we're dealing with is quite complicated. It deals with the laws of an individual who is subpoenaed to give evidence in court, and he takes a shvua, he makes an oath that he has no evidence to give, and the oath is false. That's what we start dealing with. But you've been so amazing in being engaged in all these difficult Gemaras we've had over the last little while. So I thought, let's take a lighter, not a less serious, but it's just an easier to understand topic which we have at the bottom of Lamed Amud Aleph, where the Gemara bases itself on the posuk we have in the Torah. Lo ta'asu avil b'mishpat. When you're judging, when you're sitting in judgment in a court of law, don't do anything that is not straight, anything crooked. Lo tisa pnei dal v'lo te'edar pnei gadol. Do not favor either the poor person or do not flatter and glorify the wealthy person, the great person. But tzedek tishpot amitecha. Judge your friend with justice, with righteousness, with truth, with tzedek. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, but tzedek tishpot amitecha. What does this pasuk mean? Shelo yehei echad yoshev ve'echad omed. If you're sitting in court, you're a judge, don't allow one litigant to stand and the other one to sit. Echad medaber kol tzorko ve'echad omer lo katzer dvarecha. The one you let talk as long as he wants to talk, and the other one you say, be brief, just you've been talking enough. And Rashi explains that the reason for that is not just appearances. The reason is that if one litigant sees you favoring the other in any way, it shuts him down. He becomes defensive. He doesn't give his best arguments. He loses energy, and you'll end up not getting the full story. That's why it's betzedek tishpot. Your judgment will not be righteous if you're not treating them the same way, because they won't give you the same information as they would if they both felt they were being heard fairly. When a person feels, this is not just in the court of law, when a person feels he or she is being heard fairly, they will engage in constructive conversation. If they've made a decision that you're not fair to start with, then they're not even going to get involved. They're not going to become vulnerable. As how Rashi explains it. Davar acher, but the Brisa says there's another dimension to this posuk. But tzedek tishpot amitecha havidan et chavirecha lekaf zchut. You should judge your friend favorably. Assume the best of your friend, and of course, you're just in the middle of Pirkei Avos in the Mishnah Yashir. You've dealt with that in Pirkei Avot, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. But there's slight differences between the way it appears in Pirkei Avot and the way it appears here. Says Rashi, "V'lo bedin ba'alei dinim hakatuv medaber." This davar acher, when the Brisa adds up and says, and there's another dimension to this posuk, it means the one dimension is it's an instruction to judges how to treat people in a court of law. The other one is bero'eh chaviro said davar she'ata yachol lahachrio letzad avira uletzad zchut. You see somebody else has done something which you could decide is bad, or maybe they didn't intend it to be bad. Hachri ol lizchut va'al tachshedeyu ba'avira. Make the assumption, the decision that he's in a favorable way, and do not suspect him of having done something wrong. That word tachshedei, as we'll see, is very important. The Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvah says this is a mitzvahs aseh. This is one of the laws of the Torah. It's one of the 613 laws of the Torah. The 177th positive mitzvah in the Torah, and that is the mitzvah is betzedek tishpot amitecha. So the first part of it is how to conduct yourself in a court of law. But v'yesh bo od. But there's another element, shira'ui ladun et chavero lekaf zchut. That not only if you're in a court of law, but as Rashi says, even if you're just dealing with your friend, you must make positive assumptions. V'lo yefaresh ma'asav udvarav ela letov v'chesed. And don't explain his actions and his words in any way other than positive. So this is a way of perush. It's not a question of what you see. You can say, but I saw him doing wrong. Yes, that's what you saw. Now what's the perush? In the Rosh Chodesh, we talked about the difference between seeing something and hearing something. Hearing is the perush, is understanding the context of giving meaning to something. That you've seen, that's fine, you've seen. In a court of law, you've got to deal with what you see. In a court of law, you don't start with perushim. You don't give explanations. In a court of law, you deal with the fact, what did the person do? And you deal with what was visible, with what was seen. A witness's job is simply to report what was seen, what was the What is the evidence? But when you're judging somebody in interpersonal relationships, they put it into a context of meaning. How do you understand this person's actions? Yes, this person it looks like a terrible thing, but maybe there are other ways to understand it. Is there a way to contextualize and give it meaning so that it isn't as bad as it looks? And if there is so, that's the thing to do, to be mefaresh ma'asav, to explain his actions. Don't suffice with what you saw. Get into the perush, get into the explanation as well. The Rabbeinu Yonah in the Shari Tshuva, it breaks it down into quite a lot of detail, this halacha. The Shari Tshuva, especially the third shar of the Shari Tshuva, is like a Shulchan Aruch for midos, the laws. He gets into details of how to behave, how to conduct oneself. And he divides it into different categories. Im ha'ishu yarei Elokim, if this person that you're judging is a God-fearing person, nitchayavta ladun oto lekav zchut al derech ha'emet. You must assume, and in truth, it's a decision. It's not just a maybe, he didn't mean badly, maybe there's a good interpretation to it. No, if this is a tzaddik, you know it's good. That's where you go. If he's an ordinary kind of person, sometimes he does good, sometimes he does bad. In such a case, that's where you make an assumption. You have a doubt. Maybe it was good, maybe it was bad, maybe his intention was positive, maybe it was negative. In such a case, you make an assumption that it was positive. In the first case, where he's the tzaddik, it's not an assumption. You decide, this is good, he meant well. In the second case, you choose to make an assumption. We've spoken before about the fact that we can't control what people do, but we can control what assumptions we make on the basis of what people do. And the assumption you make over here is the person came from a good place. V'hu mitzvat aseh min Torah, and that is a mitzvah aseh. That's an actual positive mitzvah. It's a requirement of the way we engage with people, that we make those assumptions. And if you just think of how many times it comes Yom Kippur, one has to remember these things. Sometimes Yom Kippur people scratch around to try and find their averos. And if you realize that every time you have not made a positive assumption about somebody who seems to be doing something wrong, then that's an Issur D'Oraisa. One has not been Mekayim a mitzvahs aseh of the Torah. Shenema b'tzedek tishpot amitecha. And then he goes on. What happens if it looks more obvious that this was bad intention? This doesn't look good at all. Then hold it as a sofek. Keep it in your mind as a doubt. Don't assume it's negative. You might not assume it's positive, but don't assume it's negative. Live with the doubt. It's okay. I'm not sure what it was. I don't know. And if this is a bad person who generally does bad things and has no Yirah Shamayim, then don't be a naive fool. Then you must assume it was bad. This is a bad person. Everything this person does is bad. You must assume that what he did is bad. If Hitler, does something that looks like he's doing something good and showing some kindness to somebody, don't even leave it as a sofek. You know it's not good. You know the intention is bad. He's up to mischief. And that's how we need to deal with people. So the Shari Tshuva explains it very carefully. Both the Rambam and the Shari Tshuva, however, hold, as does the Gemara seem to be saying very clearly, that this is a mitzvahs aseh. This is a positive mitzvah of the Torah. It's one of the Taryag mitzvot. This is how we have to behave, and this is how we have to be. It's interesting that in the Rambam brings it in Hilchot Deot, in the 5th Perek, where he talks about Talmidei Chachomim, the laws of a Talmid Chacham. And he says a Talmid Chacham danet kol adam lekaf zchut. This is something a Talmid Chacham does. That's a little odd, because if it's a mitzvahs aseh d'oraisa, as the Rambam says in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, and as Rabbeinu Yonah says, if this is a mitzvah of the Torah, it's one of the 613 mitzvot, why does the Rambam bring it where he talks about the laws of a Talmid Chacham? A person who's a scholarly person, who learns Torah, who's a God-fearing person, this is how he should behave. And what about the rest of us? Does this not apply to us? As the Rambam? No, it's not. It's not an expectation of everybody. It's an expectation of a Talmid Chacham. But Rambam, you yourself wrote in Sefer HaMitzvahs that this is a mitzvahs aseh d'oraisa. Why are you only pasking it for a Talmid Chacham? So where the Rambam gets that from, you'll see that the words he brings is not the word from our Gemara. In the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he brings the words from our Gemara. V'havidan et chavirecha lekav zchut. Here he brings the wording from Pirkei Avot. And Pirkei Avot we know is Mila de Chasidut, and Pirkei Avot is how to go further, how to be a mensch. It doesn't deal with the halachot. Pirkei Avot is not a Shulchan Aruch of the minimum requirements of being a good Jew. Pirkei Avot is how to be an exceptional human being. And he brings it from Pirkei Avot, where we have Yeshua ben Prachi and Venita Harbeli. They are part of the Zugot, so that's before the time of the Tanaim, during the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. Kiblu mehem, Yeshua ben Prachi omer, aseh lecha rav, 3 pieces of advice. Find yourself a Rebbe, have a Rav, always have a Rav, have somebody you're learning from. Uknei lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself a friend. V'havidan et kol ha'adam lekav zchut. And there we have it, and judge every person lekav zchut. And on that, the Rambam says in the Perush HaMishnayos, he says, tzarich b'derech ha'ma'ala, that's a fine thing to do, to judge everybody lekav zchut, to judge everybody positive, that's a great thing to do. Again, the Rambam seems to be saying clearly, it's not a mitzvah d'oraisa, not everybody has to do it. It's a good thing to be able to do. And the Rav goes the same way, midat chasiduti laduno lekav zchut. It's a midas chasidus meaning it's a pious thing to do over and above the minimum requirements of keeping the laws of the Torah. There's an additional thing of also you should judge people positively. That's a midat chasidut. So what is the tension? If it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, if it's a positive mitzvah, the Torah, it applies to everybody. It's not a midat chasidut. This is not just for pious people and for Talmidei Chachamim. And I think the answer to it lies in the Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil at the top of the second page. Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil, we've talked about before. He was a Talmud of the Ravid from Provence in France. The Ravid, spent a lot of his time studying the Rambam and disagreeing with him, and writing notes on the Rambam, which we have as the Hasagot HaRavid, showing that there are times when he doesn't think the Ravid, and he talks in very strong language against the Rambam. And Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil is a Talmud of the Ravid. But Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil writes a letter to the Rambam. And not long before the Rambam passes away, 6 or 7 years before that, he writes a letter to the Rambam with 24 very difficult questions on the Rambam, which obviously he's got from his Beis HaMedrash with the Ravid. He took the 24 hardest questions and he sends them off to the Rambam, and he says, we're struggling with this, we don't understand this. And he writes to the Rambam very respectfully. The Rambam writes back beautifully. And he obviously senses that Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil must have had to pluck up a lot of courage to send this letter off to the Rambam. And he says, I thank you for this letter, because in my old age, the Rambam wasn't that old, he didn't die that old, but he was, in those days that was considered old age. He says, you show me that there are Talmidim, there are people in the world out there, even in France, who study what I've written so carefully that they've got these 24 questions. It brings me such pleasure and such comfort to know that you've taken so much trouble to learn my Torah. It's so interesting how you see in the Rambam, he doesn't get defensive. Who are you to be asking me all these questions? Do you think I haven't thought them through? On the contrary, he says, thank you for taking the trouble to learn it so thoroughly that you have these 24 questions, and here I'll answer them. And he goes through all 24 of them and answers all the 24 questions. So this is the Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil. And let's learn the Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil carefully. Havidan et חבירך lekav zchut. That's from our Gemara. Klomar, בכל עניין שתוכל לצדד שלא תאשים את חברך במה שהוא עושה לך. He adds that word לך in. If your friend has done something to you, firstly, Pirkei Avos is talking about generally, not necessarily about where he's done something to you. Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil says, our Gemara is talking about where he does something to you. If there's any way that you cannot blame him for what he did, aseh, then go that route. Uvezeh tachnis ahava bencha leveino, im lo tachshidehu. And by doing so, you will bring love into your relationship. Now, why is Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil adding that? After all, the Gemara is a mitzvah d'oraisa. The Torah says you've got to do it. The Torah doesn't say you've got to do it as a strategy. It's not a way to make friends and influence people. The Torah is not the El Karnigi, giving you ideas as how to make friends with people. That's not what the Torah is doing. The Torah is saying it's good for your neshama to do this. Why does Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil says, and this way you will introduce love into your relationship, im lo tachshedehu, just by your suspicion. In other words, Rabbeinu Yonasan Milunil is saying this is not even how you act to your friend. This is the inner place from which you come. Your friend will sense that you're suspicious of him. Your friend will sense that you've judged him negatively. So if you can project a positive energy, that you're judging him positively, your friend will feel that and feel embraced by you. And that will bring love. Where does he get that from? He gets that piece from Pirkei Avot. Because Pirkei Avot is, here in this case, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya says three things, and you've got to learn them together. Yes, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya, I know there's a halacha in Shavuos Daf Lamed that you've got to judge everybody lekav zchus. I know that, but there's another element apart from it being a mitzvah d'oraisa. There's a law. I'm advising you, aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rebbe. Keneh lecha chaver, acquire for yourself a friend. That's relatively easy. Find yourself a rebbe, find yourself a friend. You know what's difficult? Keeping them. Keeping your rebbe. That the person you chose to be a rebbe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or how many years ago, David? 50 years ago? it can still be your rebbe. You think you're not going to see him doing things that are questionable, you're not happy. 50 years, you're going to be with a rebbe, you're never going to see him do anything which you think she shouldn't be doing, or you wouldn't have done, or you wouldn't want to see him doing. If you have a friend, you have a chaver, do you think there are not times he's going to do things to you that upset you and that offend you? The only way you'll keep your rebbe and you'll keep your friend is have done it kol ha'adam lekav zchut. Look at the whole person. As the Chidush HaArim says, there's a beautiful sefer of Hasidic stories. It's the only source we have of some of the stories that we have about people like about Reb Simcha Bunu Mepshischa, about the Kotzke, is the Siach Sarfei Kodesh, was written 100 years ago. And in it he talks about how the Chidush HaArim says, Kol ha'adam, if you look at the total person, if you look at the whole person, you can judge him lekav zchut. If you just look at the action, you don't have all the information. Just understand a person is very big and you can't see the whole picture. So understand the bigness of a human being and judge him lekav zchut. If you can do that, then you'll keep your friend. If you can do that, you will keep your Rebbe. And that's why Rabbeinu Yonasan ben Lunil says, not only is this a mitzvah d'oraisa that we learn from B'tzedek Tishpot Amitecha, but it's also the way, it's a method of keeping these relationships. You're not suspecting that his intention is to anger you. You give him the benefit of the doubt in the intention. Hishtadel, try to do it, says Rabbeinu Yonasan ben Lunil. You can't always do it, but always try. Always make the effort. Because if your friend and your Rebbe feels that you're making an effort to see it through a positive lens, that will introduce love into the relationship. It's the way to solve difficult relationships. It's the way to get over conflict. It's the way to get over the difficulties that relationships get into in families, between husbands and wives, between friends, between Talmidim and Rabbeim. Over time, there will be conflicts, there will be difficulties. If you just mishtadel, make the effort to try and look at kol ha'adam, to look at the whole being, the whole person, the other party will feel your effort. They'll feel you trying to see it positively. And that will be machnis ahava beincha leveino. And that way, not only will you be mekayim the mitzvah d'oraisa, but you'll also be doing something strategically wise in being able to build enduring relationships, both with one's rabbeim and with one's chaverim.